Hello! We are joining hand in hand today to cast some games between Benno and Pr0nogo. Benno apparently wanted to do a best of 3, and here we are. The map is Otherworld. That's what people refer to Canada as. The place where everything is ludicrously expensive and really just made in China anyways. Pr0nogo happens to be Zerg, with a U, that's Zerg. Not going for gas. I find that Pr0nogo always goes for quads first anyways. So not really too surprised to see that. I think Pr0nogo said that in these games, knowing that Benno is more of a non-aggressive early player, he was coming into this with the goal of trying to do more macro-oriented stuff. He said it was going to be entertaining. I don't know about you, but well, the 1 or 2 times he went macro against me, it was still unbelievably one-sided. Except for really early on where I abused Panoptises. I still remember those games. It's the only games I was able to consistently win. But things are a little different in this, since the cast of that FFA. He said there would be something related to hippogriffs we could discuss in this, or at least see. So I'm expecting that the games will actually go on longer. This is after, I believe, the actual hippogriff changes. In that FFA, I discussed some possible adjustments you could see to them. I did that without actually looking what he did. He rose their weapon cooldown, shortened their range, and doubled their, or rather halved their turn speed. So a little bit of everything in there, I suppose. Doesn't really address the whole point that, of course, the front load damage is still going to be absolutely insane. Makes them a little more approachable. There is an idle worker there as Pr0nogo looks around. Oh, look, it's Cyprians. Benno never builds Cyprians. It's very, very foreign build for him. And this mess is going to be heckled by Zeths, but Pr0nogo is going to spend an ungodly amount of APM trying to hunt down this worker, and all Benno has to do is occasionally move it in the other direction. That he got cornered in a thing there, though. I think he could have just moved it back to his base and really just served to waste a lot of Pr0nogo's time, but... Oh, look, we're going to see the new Nathakor graphic. I think I saw it posted in the channel a while ago and haven't seen it in motion at all. So, we'll see that Benno's doing something slightly non-standard where I think he's too accustomed to Gorg openings at this point, but this should be quite fine anyway. So there's the Nath. So the Nath wiggles more, that's for sure. It looks sort of similar to it used to, but now it actually has wings on it. So the mix of like the player color and the white makes it really, really noisy, and it might even animate a little too much. It's kind of like, if they're in a big stack, I feel like it'd be really hard to pick them apart. They do apparently have attack animations though, so I guess we'll get to see that. As long as they don't die miserably. Benno is definitely doing something very abnormal. We don't see a core, we don't see a fast expand. We see double anchors straight into star pads. So this is really abnormal for him. And instantly murdered. Just instantly murdered. Didn't really get to take a look at their attack or anything like that. Meanwhile, we have Pr0nogo is actually going to take me. Oh, I know what map this is now. It's this map. This is a map I played against Shambler on this map a couple times, I think. No, maybe not. No, not this map. It's some of the base layout looks similar to one of the maps we played, but no, the positions are all different, and it's this is a 1v1 map, right? It's really weird. And then what the fuck's going on down here? It's just a strange map. Very, very high resource. Holding this middle, if you hold out for a while, it's just crazy amount of resources in there. I think these isolated geysers are actually for advanced workers, you know, that things almost nobody builds unless it's to make lots and lots of items. Going straight for a third expansion. I think Pr0nogo saw him all bunkered up and just was consigned just to go straight for heavy macro instead of... I think he could absolutely pressure this out for sure, but Maybe he had to do a tech switch for that, and he didn't really feel like he wanted to do that. He wanted to more focus on his macro. So the thing is, though, is that Benno could have hardlined straight into a drop at this point. He could have gone straight to a Trojan, gotten a whole bunch of Ackmeds, or even just a handful of Cyprians, dropped them right into Pr0nogo's main. Pr0nogo would get absolutely fucking annihilated. But the window for a kill threat is rapidly disappearing, and Benno doesn't seem to have any interest in going for something like that anyways. He did go all the way across the map just to hunt down the one Zethagor he found over there. There's still one burrowed there, and one burrowed here next to a neutral anchor that may or may not serve as some minor annoyance. So yeah, the Nathrakor graphic is a little busy from the animation, I think. And I'm not so sure the white really works well with it. Maybe we'll get another look at it later in the match. Because like there's white on these too, but it's not quite as bright. It still feels like it's really out of contrast though. Like with the darker, well, with any of the player colors, I think it's going to do that. We do have white on the Droleth, but it's on a larger part of its body, with more depth to the shading as a result. So I think that the white is more like a read for the Droleth. It's more distinct for that. I think maybe the Hydra might. Yeah, I don't really remember. We'll see it eventually. I'm sure we might get some comparisons to see who can stand out for it. I did find the new Quasilisk kind of difficult to pick out in the darker tile sets, like in Shakuras when there's a lot of them attacking. Since then, they have updated the overlay for them. It's a little bit brighter. So when they kind of all mesh together, it's like there's some softening. Like the renders really aren't one-to-one with the rest settings. Like you see specularity highlighted here on the hatchery. You don't really see that on these, right? You can kind of see it on the drone too, on the ridges on the side as it's moving where my cursor is. The specularity highlights, but you don't see that in the new graphics. So I do believe that there's definitely some render settings that can be polished up for those to help them just pop out a little bit more, right? Because you can even kind of see in there's highlights here, right? Whereas with the player color on these, the highlights are getting kind of dampened. So you can see down the ridge of the back, right? You're talking differences of like individual RGB values sometimes, but it does absolutely make a difference, and it can be really, really, really hard to get the renders at that point. I think that's the point you gotta be at, though, is really starting to be pessimistic about that. Because as you start replacing all the graphics, they're all gonna become kind of dulled out by that, and it could really dramatically affect the readability, I think. Meanwhile, benno is out here just with a handful of reds and an Anseal, but it so happens that Pr0nogo's built virtually nothing but anti-air defense. So it's going to do absolutely nothing. It's going to a fast lateral Iris. Pr0nogo is about 10 workers ahead, which is quite a lot for a Zerg versus Terran. It's going to be a whole base ahead. His cell's saturated up and good to go. That's going to be on top of tier 2. It's already halfway done. Pr0nogo's not at the moment building another tech structure, but yeah, that's what that was going to be. I was actually expecting a Hydra. I was actually hoping for a Hydrock in. We could have looked at the Hydrolisk against the Quasilisk, getting a little bit closer of a glance there. There's really a lot of anchors. benno's got some tism, but I'm not really sure what he's doing. There's no tier 2 on the way. He's got a lot of minerals, but since he has been pumping Cyprians, he's not really getting anything out of it. Pr0nogo's not doing anything aggressive whatsoever. He is extraordinarily vulnerable. This is peak disrespect. Benno could just have walked over him at any point, but that window again. There's like little windows here that, you know, he has enough forces here. He could definitely put down a lot of damage and really contain, but the second that this finishes and stuff starts morphing, that really rapidly closes because his movement speed takes so long. Yeah, I definitely feel like some of the highlights, there needs to be slightly more specularity. Very, very slight. Because you really see like the back and the heads. Some of that shine gets missed out on, whereas the drones, you really do see that. The buildings more so tend to look better, though. Then you go like with like the Overlord, like the ass end is kind of in the front end are kind of flattened out. Like Blizzard's shit's extraordinarily inconsistent. Still going straight for a lot of anti-air. Some service defenses down there, but mostly anti-air. Popo really did not want to be heckled by Wraiths, but Wraiths were definitely in a small group here. It's kind of funny how he went very, very fast for the star pad, but there's been no drops. He didn't build another star pad. He really didn't hit a critical mass of Wraiths. He got tickled once and immediately got cold feet and ran away again. The second that Bactylisk comes out, this is going to be just a train wreck. But maybe Popo's going to go even for the longer game. So there's an expansion here that's started but not walled up. This doesn't feel like one of Benno's stronger games, that's for sure. I feel like that he was a lot more on the ball against me. It felt like he had much more map presence going on, even if he wasn't like super aggressive. No tier 2 yet at all for him. This is an incredibly precarious situation for him. So Popo's got tech, but he's not doing anything with it at the moment. He's just expanding. He's got another Larvos down here. Not dropping any macro hatches yet, but he's going to be getting to the point he probably wants to do that. These are flying down here. They might discover this as a single Kagerlisk. Defenses are morphing. Once those turn into tier 2, it's just going to be untouchable. In tier 1, there's like a small window, but he's got one in a I think the Wraiths might be able to force that down. Well, Benno want to commit to that, though. Looks like he's going to be pulled into it one way or another. Here we go. So apparently the Ant Seal's radius is actually really short. And not that he's keeping it very close anyways. He's losing a lot of Wraiths for really not much gain. Killed 1 Kagger and a handful of Droleths. It wasn't a very costly exchange for him at all. The Hydrog Den is finally morphing. I kind of expected to see that a while ago, but of course I'm talking about the consistency of assets, but of course we got rips and ports and things hack jobbed all together here, right? So we've got some of these are animating and one is not animating. So that's another bug. Oh no, never mind. That's a Quaslisk. I couldn't tell the difference between the Quaslisk and their Lyralisk at all. They looked identical to me for a moment there. Yeah, they look super similar. I mean, the heads are different and everything, but at a glance, they look basically identical to me. I feel like the Lyralisk needs to be larger, or its arms. I mean, its arms are more to the sides as opposed to Quaslisk's here. But really, the only thing that immediately told me they're different is what I thought to be the bug is that the Quaslisk wasn't animating. Right. They look way too similar for me. So there's an attack over here. Lyralisk's not really going to do too well against mass Cyprians. He never moved those anchors around. I actually thought he might have been going for an anchor drop, but yeah, not really a lot of range on those. He's looking more for the Kagerlisks for their range, but he's only got a few of those. Can kite him around, but has to get into the danger zone to really make most out of that army he's got, which means that the trade just kind of goes back and forth. Again, Bactylisks is kind of what I expected. Maybe Popo felt that Bactylisks would be too easy, too cheating against this, but now I believe that is what he's going to go next. Benno, on the other hand, is amassing Masons, does have tier 2 and some Phalanxers are coming. The fact that Popo did not go Bactylisks right away is going to kind of cause him some issues, I think. Only momentarily, though. The sheer number of bases and the economic difference is quite high. The worker count is the same, but it's mostly amounting to oversaturation on Benno's behalf. So yeah, the Agilis does have white spots. I thought it might have been on their claws, but it isn't. It's just on the tail. But again, it's a larger body part than the little tiny ones, right? Like the little tiny ones on the Quaslisk almost looks like noise at a glance because it's a little too small of a body part to have the shading definition. Whereas on the Hydras, it's just the spines on the tail. The spines on the tail are pretty large. I think on the Lyrilisk it looks reasonably well, but again, we have this like this softening, dampening effect. Like we're missing some of the specularity that kind of makes the head look really flat. But because it's animated, it's less of an issue than what the non-animate version has. So some phalanxes are up here, but they do not have any ancials, but they do have some sentinels. So gonna kind of be up in Benno's court here to keep those tanks repaired, because the bouncing projectiles are gonna do quite a bit of damage to them. They're not being repaired or shielded. Just this little hotspot of anchors, not really in a spot that offers them much protection there. The air comes in and starts tickling. They do have 3 armor pens, so they're not terrible against those. And so this anchor has nothing in it, so that kind of helps too. So some shield on this phalanx keeps it alive for an amount of time, but all the damage is pretty much dead, except for this last anchor, the one that does have Cyprians in it. We'll slowly start mowing through stuff that comes into range as he tries to repair. The Blackjacks have arrived. A new Benno favorite, relatively new anyways. They're kind of like Mavericks, just more durable. They also do have armor penetration, so they can be useful. And the last of Popo's forces, the long-range basilisks, die by charging forward into the anchor miserably. He has some reinforcements coming in to pick off this treasury. It's only got 850 health now. Some fast repairs are needed here, but the Masons instead choose to cut the shit out of the Hydras instead. Easy. Easy clap. The Potato Thaloras have arrived. They're also reasonably well ranged, not as much as the tank, but decent burst damage. Not really too expensive. They're actually quite spammable. You don't usually see them in large numbers, but they're great in large numbers. There is an Anus Canal over there. I guess you can rally to those. I didn't know that. Now, with unlimited unit extension, you don't have to feel bad about making 10 billion Zethicors. Just between you and me, I always forget it exists because I've only played a handful of games with it and I forget it's there, and I still end up like group selecting stuff anyways. South Ministry being built, some objects being floated down here to act as decoration, starports and routes. Both players are floating an absolutely insane amount of minerals, but Popo can dump through that really fast if he wants to. Benno's pretty starving on gas though. The economic difference is going to allow Popo just to force him down, but it is mass Cyprians, so the Zethicors never really were a great choice for this, and it turned into Sentinels over time. It's even less of a good choice for this. He tried Vorvicors because they're tankier, but well, they aren't really killing machines like they used to be in the days of yore. Now we're starting to see some macro Hatchwasks. Popo could have expanded to the middle a long time ago, but he seems perhaps a little too timid to do that quite yet. I think he got a little too greedy with those attacks trying to force it down. He's going to tier 3. He might go for a contain right now and then tech up. This is Benno's time to take over on the left side of the map that's never been scouted or otherwise pressured whatsoever. Although some area units are gathering here that may or may not peek around. With some meat on its way, Popo could force that down without ever going into tier 3 if he has enough meat. He does have a lot of basilisks that can definitely do enough damage, so long as he gets them into the right place. Ministry going down there. These starports haven't done anything yet. There's an Antseal chilling out in the middle of nowhere with a large number of Blackjacks coming. Well, I think at the point you start seeing Basilisks, you're going to need something other than Blackjacks, because there's no armor. The basilisks would just rip them apart, and their passive doesn't make them particularly good against getting chipped down to begin with. And heaven help him if he tries to go anywhere near that ramp. It'll be a massacre. Most of his tanks aren't even sieged right now, which will give them armor, but means that by the time they get to siege, I think over half of his army is going to be fucking dead. Oh, this Anseal's going to get annihilated. Oh, good reflexes. Just about. 2 HP. It didn't die. The Masons are flailing around. Benno is still just on the heels of Popo and worker count with a fraction of the bases. There's the middle expansions we were waiting for. Popo has finally expended every last drop of his money. It's going all into skiths. What's he doing with the skiths? It's not going to make Vithalisks with them. There's not much point. But you never know. There are Sundogs being built now. I guess you could. Oh, right. Sundogs were also changed. I don't know if that's this version, though. Yes, that is this version. Okay, so they are actually at single targets now. I guess Popo took that suggestion to heart when I said I thought Sundogs were more about assassins than anything. Because I had a similar conversation with him before. See, like, I think the render on the tank is just about perfect. If there's anything I would change on it, again, maybe specularity, but I don't think it's necessary. I think they're about perfect in terms of, like, the shine and everything. And the Blackjack's pretty good, too. But the Zerg, I feel like we got highlights here, but I feel like... God, I've worked in PBR for so long, I don't even remember. It's like the gloss value or something you would change on it. So the fatties charged forward, they all died terribly. The basilisks started shooting the stockade instead of helping the main army, which means the main army is taking a ton of damage without really exchanging the full power of his budget at the moment. The Zarians did come over here and start killing this relatively undefended expansion, though. The basilisks are sort of half and half, but the tanks being unsieged and unprotected, still taking a lot of bounce damage. Kind of charges forward, but there's way too many units to deal with now. The Sundogs are coming over here. They'll easily deal with these air units in spite of no splash. Doesn't really matter. Still a crazy amount of... Nope, now he ignores them. Fuck that. I don't need to deal with those. The potato Thalor has arrived. He has departed. No potatoes. Mash them, boil them, stick them in the stew. Just straight to the stew for him. The tanks have no health. Popo can easily force this, but he is aware that there is an amount of Sundogs. Just an amount. Meanwhile, these are still tickling him. Annihilated. Finally annihilated anyways. His tanks marched forward into certain doom, and the rest of them were easily annihilated as there was no turrets being built or anything. Benno is very starved of money, and at this point decides to call it quits. So that to me was a pretty bog standard game. That was Benno not really taking advantage of that. I think he expected a lot of early pressure. I mean, it's Popo. I think you just kind of expect a lot of early pressure. And it didn't really come. So he felt perhaps uncomfortable by that, right? He was a little off guard. We definitely saw a very different early build, a very, very defensive build from him. Meanwhile, Popo just like gradually took over the map. But I felt like Popo could have been even more aggressive with taking over the map, especially when you're sitting at like 2,000 minerals and nobody's doing anything. Just take even more, right? He started doing so, but I think especially when it goes to the point where you pivot to like the later on, is that kind of like where Pr0nogo's weaknesses sort of start to show. He's needlepoint focused so much into the early game with everything. He's so like rush and aggro oriented that you can kind of start to see cracks. I mean, I think that's the case with most people. Generally, I perform better in the late game, but not Not always, not in the last few months in particular, particularly because I haven't played consistently, but also because of all the things that are going on that have just generally eroded and destroyed my sanity. Real life has been just too much. But Popo doesn't have any of that going on. He's living at the top of the world. He's got everything. Everything a man could want, he's got. But he's also what I feel like to be a very, like, a high-octane kind of person. High energy. That high energy shows the most early game. Now, of course, he's got however many hours I have behind this project. You can add, like, probably, like, another, like, 2 or 3 zeros onto the end of it, and that's how many hours he's got in it, just playing it, right? So, but most of that I feel like is centered really early on, except for versus AI, because, you know, like, the PvP and the stuff in this has been relatively recent, other than maybe matches he had with other developers, I think, right? From what little I've followed, other than the occasional fraud arc, which is pretty uncommon and not as scale, not really as competitive. But before that, I feel like, again, he was really centered on, like, the first 15 minutes. So he's got, like, the high EAPM and everything like that. That isn't to say I think he becomes, like, a complete mess at the later on in the game. Obviously, when we watch those games with the first-person VODs, it was quite evident that his EAPM stays really rather high. But you do still start to see some of those things, like forgetting the bases, you know, maybe not expanding or being super optimal about stuff. Like, I expected the hard switch to Bactylisks right away. We didn't really see that. That might have been a conscious decision, though, right? To try to see if he can get through without it. Or maybe he thought that Benno was doing something off-key and just going, like, mass error right away, right? Like, it was just all mass. But he already killed a whole chunk of race, and it was just that chunk of race with one ant seal. There really wasn't evidence to believe that he was committing super hard to that. But we'll save our extended discussion for the end of this series, I suppose. So, this will be on the same match. This time, Popo is playing as Terran versus Benno, who is playing, surprisingly, as Terran. We never say that. Let me just check something very briefly. I actually have a folder called Benny Boy. Yeah, no, this is correct. Okay. It is correct, isn't it? Please tell me it's correct. I don't want to be a dummy. No, I am correct. Okay, good. I'm just making sure we're casting these replays in order. I had to rename them. And then I didn't validate that because, you see, Windows was made by brilliant individuals. And it's very capable of silently breaking the internet. And basically, what happens is things will just mysteriously stop working. So in this case, the Pr0nogo launcher would mysteriously get hung on fetching remote data. There would be no errors or anything. You could leave it running for hours and nothing would happen. And other, like, specific things, specific transactional things would just cease to work. Like some internet protocol would just silently fail and nothing would ever throw you errors about it. You would just notice, like, bits and pieces, like specific interactions in a game would not work. Like, I'm building a massive game design discussion video for Apex. I'm using Black Desert Online for some of the examples. The marketplace just mysteriously would stop working and throw really vague errors. So when I initially got these replays, I planned to cast them on the spot until I ran into that. That delayed me by a day. And then, you know, fucking bullshit in real life just consumed all my energy for the next several days. So I never even checked to make sure we did stuff properly and sorting them, but that how it be, right? So there's definitely some tism going on here. Benno attempted some assassinating, absolutely attempted assassinating. Fast Fulcrum. I think if you're going to do Fulcrum in its current state, it has to be against Terran. It doesn't work against Zerg unless you can really pull off early Goliaths. And I don't think it works well against Protoss either, although Legionnaires have been nerfed since the Ascension matches. I still feel like the Cyclops and everything like that don't really give you the power you need against Protoss whatsoever. But if you can get some kind of early lead off of the Vultures, enough to stem aggression, it can be really great, because then if your plan is to go into Phalanx's Madrigals, then you've already got the infrastructure for it. You don't have to waste money building, you know, Cyprians or whatever. They're going to spend half the game in the bunker anyways, right? Like, it's more optimal in a mid-term than in the long term. And if, you know, if you're up against a player expecting to be more passive, I think you can absolutely do that. It's just everybody I play up against is hyper fucking aggressive. So, like, if I so much as move a worker 5 pixels to the left too far, I lose the game instantly. But Benno is taking this game a little bit more standard than the last one. We see the fast expand, the early quarry, the double stockade, all kinds of sorts of things I really expect Benno, the man, to do. And Popo is also going to probably play by the book that he had explained to me before, which he was looking more for macro stuff, right? So we are seeing a star pad, however, that will delay his tier 2 if he had ambitions for an early tier 2. But he might not be discounting the fact that the early Fulcrum opens us up to a early push or an early drop. Again, I think last game Benno was in a perfect position to end that match very quickly with an early drop. It just, you know, he never really had the ambitions to do that. I have a feeling that Benno might be the kind of player that the early Vulture harass could really cause him a lot of headaches on. Now, he's always going to go Cyprians, which are strong against Vultures, but if this was like 3 Vultures, if it was a really dedicated attack, if Popo had pulled out the one he stuffed into here, made another Vulture instead of that Cyclops, I think he could have given Benno a huge amount of headaches. Killing multiple Cyprians, more workers than he already did. That Vulture definitely paid for itself. You know, he could have caused a lot of discomfort at that point. There is actually a Cyclops over here, so it's almost impossible to tell the player colors between each other. They're both basically the exact same of blue on some of these units here. And Benno's like a darker one on the mini-map, so it's easier to tell there, but like the Cyclops versus the Cyprians, they're almost the same. So he's trying to hackle here. There's the delayed charge from this. It's in a spot now as opposed to on a unit. I think the Popo kind of got cornered there. You see what he's kind of doing, right? Like trying to splash on the workers. It just is going to take like 20 minutes to get a worker kill out of it. But all the workers are squished up. If he gets another like 4 of them in there, I think a world exists where that could be... I mean, I guess you could go for the safer route and go all for Ackmed. Well, the problem being is that if he's going to drop them here, it's going to be right on top of an anchor full of Cyprians. That's not going to go too well for Ackmed. You never know, though. Ackmed does have 80 health, so he'll live for a few seconds. Right now, the worker counts are quite even in spite of all the shenanigans. So the big difference probably being is that this expansion is more saturated. But there's no gas mining going on there, so I think Benno's tier 2 is destined to be later in spite of everything. So Wraith is just checking him out. Oh. And it flew straight into the Cyprians, but it manages to escape. So just checking there just to see what was going on. The Wraith was... I'm not sure where the Wraith's corpse is, but I'm pretty sure it died there. Trojan is waiting. I'm not sure. Is he waiting for a second Trojan? No, he's going to tickle with a Cyclops first. Maybe to draw defenders away from the base. And then move in. That's my guess here. Well, it's not really working out that well for him. The trades go very, very unfavorably for him. He might be able to get some Cyprian kills in here, but he's going to lose everything for it. Well, that's if Benno's paying attention anyways. He's trying so hard. Benno is letting him do this. And he still loses almost everything. I think he kind of comes out on top of that trade monetary-wise, but it's so much effort for almost no gain at all. It really doesn't amount to anything. Especially when you look at the money that they're both floating at this point. It is a non-issue. It doesn't amount to anything. So the Trojan full of Hurricanes didn't do anything either. So Mavericks are coming out for Popo, and he has an Atlas chilling out here. I'm still waiting for this Trojan to actually do something. It's very possible that Popo forgot about it. I also think that if he flew over here, there would have been clear vision on it, and Benno would have had a chance to respond for sure, but... I don't know, Benno is like... not interested in building any anti-air defense anyways. But he has an anchor, and presumably those... Yep, there we go. Just like that. Brains will pop right into there. If Popo had a couple of extra lobsters just chilling out here while he was trying to do that, and could avoid getting them killed by the Cyprians because of the line trace, he could have done a lot more damage with that. I don't know if it would have amounted to anything, but it would have been a little bit better if he could have stunned them for a moment. Still waiting to see this Huracan drop. I really expected it just to beeline and like suicide the minerals. It's possible Popo's hoping to actually dive an army if it chases him out too far. I thought he might also be waiting for another Trojan and more Huracans, but it's not. There's no Ackmed Doom drop coming quite yet. Tier 2 is up for Popo, whereas it was just begun for Benno, so he'll be behind, but not giga behinds. It could turn into a travesty if it immediately went to Madrigals, but Popo seems more interested in spamming Tier 1 at the moment. He has a number of Cyclops, but they're not going to do too much against these anchors. Might kill some workers in the process. One anchor goes down, but most of Popo's army is already annihilated. There's no lobsters over here, so even just the two Cyprians cause him so many headaches. And if Benno turned around, he could have grabbed another kill off of that very easily. Popo is trying so hard to make this work. Getting some splash on this. There you go. Little bit of tickling there. Still kind of not much of an impact. Now I remembered that Ackmed exists. Ackmed is taking the scenic route now. Popo still hasn't built any machine shops. He's also not doing really anything with his tech at the moment. He did kind of forget that this expansion exists, but Benno also forgot that this mason exists too. Shit, Benno has vultures. Benno's actually going Goliaths. Neither player are doing anything with this at all. Both of them... Oh, there we go. The switch has been flipped as Ackmed is en route. Those vultures may have scouted Ackmed. There are Cyprians in this bunker. Ackmed charges forwards. Now, Ackmed does shred armor, I think, so that is not being repaired. Which means that they do actually manage to force it down since they spaced out around it. They all die for the effort, though. I'm not really sure if that really amounts to much gain, but it's still silly anyways. Oh shit. There's also a Cyprian. I'm sure Benno feels insulted that someone's trying to use his chosen weapons against him. Popo has tried so hard to make Cyclops work, and it isn't. It's just been a series of very ineffectual tickles at this point. So, Benno did get the Palladiums, but he's actually gone straight to Starport in Tier 2.5. Popo might be doing that, but it looks more like he actually wants to perhaps go for Madrigals, is my guess. Still expecting to see Sundogs, but if Popo does go Madrigals, they will deal very handily with the Sundogs now that they don't AoE. Provided he has the detection around him to make use of it. This won't be like the last game, though, where Benno is under a huge amount of pressure and doesn't really have much of a chance to stack up. He can absolutely stack up in this game for sure. Oh! The lobster nibbles. Up, up, Kill secured. Alright, the lobster is tickled, the vulture is tickled. We have tanks coming, not magicals. That could prove to be a very unfortunate choice for Popo, as Benno is beelining hard into this. Benno is soaring ahead in the worker count, and if he ever remembers that these masons on the east side exist, or the west side rather, he could become quite a menace. Until then, their bases remain even. But generally Popo's better about building defenses in his bases. He has to expect to see the sun dogs again. I mean, it's been one of those consistent Benno things at this point. Whether or not he's going to commit to building ants here ahead of time before he sees them. He hasn't scouted with a wraith again. There's been no more extra wraith scouts, so that this could have been picked up really easily with a wraith. Or he could do what Nablime does and just suicide an ant seal into it. They usually get away anyways, even at this stage in the game. He does have the 2 captaincies. The first sun dogs are out. Assorted stockades are floating around to scout, actually. Benno has abandoned the Holy Cyprian dream. We might see him start spamming blackjacks again, not really sure. Popo's decided to attack. Not an unfortuitous time to attack. He does have some AoE here, so the sun dogs will be definitely tickled that they decide to engage this before there's enough of them. But they might all die to the ledge and other shit before they really accomplish too much of anything. Kind of like that. So beach balls are being aggressively tossed at each other. It's only the first sun dogs at the moment. Benno kind of like had a nap or something. There you go. Now he's making more. Popo's floating an absolutely absurd amount of money and is slowly spamming Ackmed. He could go straight to tier 3 if he wants to. Whereas Benno maybe wants to have some additional starports or something like that. My god, it's going to be all Ackmed all the time. Popo doesn't really have the minerals to be spamming Ackmed. He can't make tier 3 anymore. There's another Trojan. So some mad caps are marching over. They're a little bit more durable, but I still don't think... Ackmed just kind of flew over here and murdered some shit. I still don't think the mad caps are going to be super amazing for this. Not really cost effective. I don't know about that. Don't think this push is going to really accomplish too much. You might be able to fortify this corner, deny the treasury for a while. But there are sun dogs. They're just not doing anything yet. They can fly over there and shut this down right away. It really depends if Benno actually remembers they're there, and if he wants to reveal their existence yet before he has enough of them. Popo's unit control is just not doing too well in this. A lot of his stuff is getting dragged in here and dying needless, disgusting deaths. More of Ackmed is on the way, though. They're just gonna fly straight into this bunk. Oh, Okay, I mean, you can splash the tanks. The Trojan actually escapes on top of it. Imagine my shock. What are you doing, Popo? What are you doing to this man? Well, benno is starting to expand, so the Sundogs are not going to opt to deflect this annoyance in front of his base. Pr0nogo is going to continue to just drop. This is so expensive to do it this way. It's really unnecessary. Benno's looking for expansions. This expansion here is quite vulnerable. There's only Mavericks in there and the one Watchdog. Benno can force that down very easily. No, this is a second Watchdog. Doesn't matter. It's gonna die right away. Remember, they're more effective against structures now. Ackmed is just on a rampage running around Benno's base as he focuses on the Sundogs. Remember, there's hardly any defenses over here, but he does have some Cyprians to guard the squishier parts of his base. This is the fucking Ackmeds. This base is fucking gone. There is a Daedala finally coming for Pr0nogo, but you notice he has no defenses anywhere in his base at all. Not enough to deal with things at this stage in the game. Did do a little bit of splash to those. The Watchdog will finish a couple off. But he's taking a ton of damage from this. They could easily deny his Daedala for the time being if they wanted to. If they found it anyways. Until then, they're going to just systematically murder his buildings. Pr0nogo's in a little bit of a pickle. The Mavericks can come here and finish these off. They only have one armor. All but one of them die. Well, that is most certainly a costly and unnecessary loss for Benno, especially given that he's kind of like fallen asleep again. It definitely gives him a lot of map power at the moment. Pr0nogo can try to force himself forward here, and he does have the greater unit count. But, well, Ackmed's antics are put down. The rest of his shit kind of has to march forward into the breach here, and it's kind of like all Pr0nogo has at the moment. He does have a little bit of a stash of money. It's going to take him a while to get back presence in this area again. Losing all the tanks hurts so much. Really should just run them away. Oh, he actually ran away from the handful of units there. Benno's trying to be careful at the moment. Could easily snipe that Anseal. There's nothing to protect it at all. The Sentinels can't hit him. The tanks can't hit him. The Daedala will soon finish. The Daedala. Still making Sundogs. Benno is really sitting on his laurels here. Okay, he remembered these dudes exist. There you go. Could easily commit to building much more defenses over there for sure. Could sneak in his own Daedala at this point while he's queuing up Sundogs. Get working towards that Hippogriff that he likes. The Hippogriffs are not as strong as they were. They're still certainly not a bad choice. Madrigals are finally coming for Pr0nogo, but it'll be hard to make them work against the Phalanxes now, so he's going to be kind of using them more defensively. Ackmed is en route once again. There's no anchor over here this time. 2 Sentinels could easily cause Ackmed a lot of problems. But Ackmed, they don't have any armor to begin with, so... Oh no. Okay, if he had drone drilled, he would have easily dealt with Ackmed at that point. I mean, Ackmed still dies. I think pulling the workers entirely was unnecessary. When things are caught up trying to decollide, they won't do anything. Oh, there's the proxy diadem. There's no tier 3 en route. So I think what Pr0nogo's strategy is to bait out the Sundogs and then blow them up. He has a Heracles that also deals splash. It's quite useful. I've been able to kill, what were they, Gorgagors with them, I think it was. Ackmed is chasing around workers. This expansion was denied. So Benno's kind of, like, this is definitely exploiting some of Benno's weakness here, where he definitely has difficulty keeping control of the map. Oh shit, dude, they just... They just annihilated the phalanxes. Annihilated. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Benno's lucky that his units had decollided because he just about lost every single one to that. That was a lot of damage though. Some of them were really low. Oh, this is bad. I actually think just leaving them on the regular attack is better because I'm pretty sure it penetrates. Now the Heracles are actually really good against this if they don't get focused down right away. They can deal some pretty high damage, but he does kill them. Yes, the regular attack for the Madrigal is also penetrating. It does a lot of damage. Ackmed is en route. Ackmed has... Oh, uh-oh. I don't think Benno's very used to dealing with this either. Oh, the lobsters! I lost track of the sundogs. Did they all die? No, they're prowling around. I was looking for their rubble. They didn't die. They just disengaged. He didn't really want to risk those defenses anymore. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a line trace projectile, their base attack. Ackmed has appeared down here and finds the Daedala very close to being finished. It's just very annoying. Benno, again, not very eager to defend a lot of his shit. So what I was noting in that FFA is it would have been very easy to pick him apart. And this is precisely why. Once you put him on the defensive, he, well, you can see he's really struggling at this stage. Like, his 8 PM, a lot of it is spam, right? Like, the multitasking gets to be overwhelming for people. Oh, this is going to be horrible. Oh, oh, he's standing in it, too. Oh, it's a train wreck. He did finish the Daedala. But he's just getting tickled to death, and Popo's resources are just so skewed right now from spamming nothing but Hurricanes. He's letting the Ackmed dream kind of overwhelm him in the moment, but you see he's got scouts kind of all over the place, right? A lot of these sundogs are still roaming around with like 40, 50, 30 health. They fly into the wrong part of town, a couple of Cyprians will just annihilate them. This has become so scrappy, even though they have so much money. But their resource count is almost inverse of each other. I'm not sure what Popo is planning other than maybe to annoy him to death at this moment. Slowly creeping the diadem forward though, right? Just got like this little squad here just slowly creeping him forward. Occasionally getting shit killed. Meanwhile, Benno is trying to get his gas under control here. He has capped like one, but he's got like 50 idle workers in this one spot. He has 236 workers. His innate state is just to build workers. It's not necessarily bad, but you got to remember to put them in stuff. At this point, he's a little squicked out. Now, since the Daedala was moved, he doesn't have detection for this Wraith here. The injured Sungdogs are coming up here straight into the Cyprians. If he attacks this, oh no, oh no, oh my god! That was disgusting. That was horrible. You can see that, like, that moment of panic when he realizes, oh wait, my opponent also has Cyprians. There's just there's Ackmed. There is a lot of Ackmed. Popo is doubling down on this tickling. You know, again, massing Goliaths is I think it's just because of his money situation. He's not really sure what to do with this at the moment. I mean, the Sundogs could have dealt with this really easily. Just pick off the Heracles and then kill the structures. There's like 3 watchdogs. They're not AoE, like. But the Sundogs died for nothing. Benno wasn't sure how to commit to this. Uh-oh, he's got a better idea though. It's happening again. I don't know, like, he had no success with the Sundogs originally on this. He's gonna try again. Ackmed is prowling. Ackmed could destroy the diadem very easily. Oh, that's precisely what's going to happen. Well, he doesn't have to now, the worker is gone. So many Ackmeds are gonna die to these fucking sentinels though. Okay, he scooped out most of them. They're very injured. Benno needs to work on protecting his investments. Oh, yeah, drop all around it and they can't splash all of them. That's how you get it. Oh shit, the Sundogs arrived. They're gonna chase the Trojans off while Ackmed just... And oh no, his tech. His tech. Popo can just... Okay, he's lifting it now, but... Just go straight for the tech. You can still destroy the Fountainhead. Maybe now Ackmed is too few in number, but the Fountainhead would have to be replaced. Benno is slowly coming apart at the seams. He has not saturated that gas or done anything with it. Alright, the nanite assemblies are en route. Shit's on fire. Shit's on fire over here. There's a bunch of tanks over here too that are just kind of chilling out. Okay, a large number of apothecaries are being made now. Apothecary units are quite strong. There's an atelier. Obviously, Benno wants to go for hippos. Now, I know that these games are going to involve something with hippos. I don't think Benno is going to be able to reach a high threshold of hippos, though. He doesn't have enough. He doesn't have enough nanite assemblies, and he doesn't really have quite enough money. And a part of that is this base never being properly saturated. Now, he built the well bore here. I think, you need 3 workers on that still, right? This only has, like, the 1 worker on. Like, I think Benno could be getting, like, almost twice the amount of gas and income he's got right now at the bases that he has. He could drop down another 2 or 3 nanite assemblies. He's being really lax about this. He has to know that the Ackmed will not stop until freedom improves. It's gonna happen again. Oh, the nanite assemblies are on fire. God, he's terrified about Ackmed. What was that? Was that the Trojan? I didn't get a good look at what that was. There's Ackmed everywhere. You can never be sure. Ackmed is everywhere. Poor Benno. I feel like he's in the middle of being psychologically traumatized at the moment. Alright, so he is making... Dilettantes. So I thought Dilettante had a passive that makes him not take damage after every 4th hit or something, but that might have been changed for all I know. They do deal fairly high damage though, I think. 0.04 with no armor pen. Okay, they might have been changed since I saw them then, because I remember their stats being different. They do pretty well, though. I mean, they are a tier 3 infantry, of course. The slow creep forward has begun. Benno, other than trying to build his one diadem, hasn't put any effort into stopping that. He is doing the next best thing, which is expanding westwards. He did finally start moving all those workers away, and he is prowling around with his sun dogs. He just took a massive amount of damage from those Heracles flying into them. He's probably not really familiar with what those units do. I don't really see them too often. There's like random watchdogs and stuff flying into here to detect. As Benno is slowly being destroyed, not responding to this again. This amount of sun dogs could have easily destroyed that. Easily. He's just allowing Popo to slowly step on him. He enjoys it. And now the dilettantes are coming into his base. He's only going to have 2 hippogriffs. I don't know if that's enough to stop the army. He is going to get some kills in pretty easily, though. Yeah, Popo stuff got too separated to, that's why approaching them is difficult, right? Benno, my man, you've got to do something about that. Okay, he's bringing in the hippos. Bring in the heaviest guns, I guess. But they fly into the watchdogs. One goes down and almost dies for the effort. Almost kills the second one. Why is that not hitting him? Oh, now he is. That was weird. It's not hitting? That feels like a bug. No, that hippo's dead. Definitely got a micro against these. You can't let them shoot at you like that. It was a train wreck. All the sun dogs died. Benno's in a really bad spot now. He's getting additional hippos, but Popo already has, like, a chunk of silver tongues will easily kill individual hippos. No contest at all. And the hippos don't have enough damage to one-shot. Not even two-shot them, I don't think. Yeah, a two-shot with 2 direct hits, but I'm curious why they weren't hitting that worker, though. Oh. Yeah, you can do this too. I think Popo has learned from my example. You can use the diadem to block them because of the armor. There's only a handful of them. Oh, of course, the second the diadem dies, it doesn't work anymore, but it's a very expensive and a very effective way to do it when there's only a handful of them. I mean, the goal is to keep him from hitting a critical mass, right? Like, if he gets, like, 10 or more of them, it becomes so much harder to deal with. Benno's probably confused. Why are there random buildings flying around my base? He is slowly getting his economy back into shape. He's just not really using it. He needs more nanite assemblies, a lot more. He's just got to build, just fortify the whole section with it. He's probably going to need a little bit of a front line too. Some cuirasses would not be too bad because they self-repair, right? When hippo charges forward, it's kind of dangerous. So they only have 1 range above the silver tongues now, so it's a little more even of a match than it used to be. Popo still has to be super wary about that ramp, though. If he goes up the ramp, he could lose everything in one go. Benno, my man. Yes, you need more. You need so many more. You've got 3,000 gas. It takes so long to build shit for the nanite assembly. You absolutely can build a chunk then. Popo is going... He's doing it again! The diadem wall. Oh. The diadem wall is falling. Oh shit. A centaur has appeared. There's not enough anti-air to deal with a centaur. Ooh, good damage off of that, though he had some backup. That's goofy shit. Definitely want to shoot at the silver tongues in this matchup. The one centaur is not nearly as dangerous and is a lot harder to kill. He's got the end seal. He can ready it up for when they pop out, and he can easily pull out of this. I don't know about the rest of the game, but he's got to be on the mark for this. But he is not. He forgot about the end seal. Poor Benno, you got to get it all under control, man. All right, he's building over here. He hasn't given up yet. He's just a little flustered is all. But Ackmed never rests. Ackmed only knows one thing, and that is hunger. The Ackmed of hungry. You don't need to flee now. I mean, you probably do. Everything's over there, but could have at least left them on mining gas for a moment. Losing like 3 workers just doesn't matter. Oh, it gives chase. Those things move pretty fast. Not the highest amount of damage, but definitely quite fast. This is something Benno should have done a while ago. If he had done it a while ago, he would have been okay. Oh no. Oh no. The intense stack has been discovered by Ackmed. And Ackmed gives chase alongside his brother Ackmed. And again, there's hardly any defenses over here. So the Centaur's close range missiles easily deal with that. Oh no, Benno, Ackmed. Ackmed. Oh no. Oh shit. Your shit's on fire. And his production has been discovered. It's all over. He's trying to build Minotaurs. Definitely not a bad choice. This Silver Tongue doesn't have any armor penetration, but still a lot of base damage. But faster movement speed can most certainly help you out with them. But they are pretty tanky units, so 120 health is not little when you can have quite a few of them. Although they are very expensive. They are not cheap units, that's for sure. But he's never going to have enough of them to put a dent on this Ackmed rampage at this point. And at that point, Annihilated by Ackmed, Benno calls it a day. Alright, so this is kind of my interpretation of what I've watched. To me, Benno seems like the poster child build order player. He has a specific way he likes to play, or that he's learned how to play, or mimicked how to play, or some mix of the above. And if you let him play that way, it generally comes out reasonably solid, right? Comes out reasonably solid. And when you disrupt that comfort zone, it kind of unhinges the whole train. And it takes a fair bit for him to get back on track, right? Now, what APM spam is supposed to help you do is warm up your hands and kind of like get you on course for higher EAPM stuff. And I'm trying to multitask conversations. So to me, like, Benno is like the textbook build order player, right? Like, he has the one main thing, and if you let him do it, and then it becomes a problem, right? Because, you know, like that FFA, for example, he was allowed to basically go on fairly uncontested for pretty much the entire game. And then, you know, for better or for worse, he then became a menace that eventually won the game, right? So everything worked out basically as well as he really could have wanted. Maybe Benno would have preferred not to have spent an hour trying to hunt around Popo and Beaver, but hunt them down he did. Just took a while. Whereas in these games, we saw Popo also tried to go a slower, more macro-paced, right? But in the first game, we kind of saw that, like, I think Benno was put off key for some reason that first game. I don't know if it was like he expected aggression that didn't come. That's kind of the vibe that I got from that. Or if he wanted to try something different in general. Or like he was just like familiar with all the other shit he had to deal with Zerg. Because he was playing against, I think, Nablime and others during this time frame, right? So he probably had, you know, Zerg always goes Gorgagor first. I better, you know, even though he saw the deaths initially, right? Maybe he wasn't at the stage where he could really understand that, oh, okay, this is going to happen. Or maybe because he saw his deaths, he was like, oh, this is going to be early aggression, right? Whereas when I see his deaths from Popo, I'm thinking, okay, it's going to go fast, expand. There might be a timing push from this, but we probably aren't going to really see it, at least immediately, right? And then that like set him off in the first game where he was kind of like perpetually behind from that point. And it sort of felt like he really wasn't able to quite get back on track at the pace he wanted to be, right? Like he wasn't able to get his expansion quite as fast out and wasn't able to get the third and fourth as fast out as he most certainly would have preferred. Then of course when it actually came to dealing with the Zerg, the Blackjacks came out too late, and they weren't really the right tools for a job at that point because it was tier 2 Zerg, you know. So the placement of the defenses wasn't ideal, some of the control wasn't ideal, so on and so forth. And then the second game, he had a more standard opening and a stronger opening. But then Popo slowly cheeked him to death. I think Popo could have closed this game like 20 minutes prior if he decided to start attacking area, like putting really major pressure on areas other than the right in the front, right? But we'll get to Popo in a moment. It was just such a strange game because Benno refused to try to uproot that little front when there was so little there. And then the diadems started propping up and creeping forward, and he had all the tools he needed to deal with that. But he was really intimidated by, maybe he wasn't like quite aware of what exactly was awaiting him there. Maybe he had some bad experiences trying to, siege diadems or sentinels before, but he had all the sundogs. They were perfect for dealing with that. And they could have shut that down right away. But he really didn't want to engage there. Instead, he did, in the circumstance where you aren't sure if you can deal that, you try to put an advantage elsewhere on the map. It was just his luck that the next time he tried to do that, after having so much success in the first bout, those all had Cyprians in them, right? So he got completely buck broken by that. But by that point in the game, Benno was already starting to get really unhinged, right? Like we started to see a lot of delay in making use of the money he had. He was still spamming workers, but so many of them weren't mining for the longest time. Much of his gas was not saturated. Ackmed really buck broke him. He got completely unhinged by Ackmed. Ackmed just ran into his house and knocked all his shit off of his table like an autistic cat. And he could just only sit there and scream at this absolute disaster. And that kind of sort of reminded me of playing against Nablime when I played against him a while ago, and it was generally Pr0nogo versus Terran, and there was just so many drops. I had the patience and the ability to deflect these drops consistently, but they tied me up for so long, and every single one would slowly push me further behind. It took him a very long time to close the matches, but close the matches he did over an extremely long period of time. Whereas the games I was able to win against him, of course, it was by abusing game knowledge, right? Like the Omen Rush, wasn't quite decisive. I had to actually go into Magisters and Epigraphs, but that was one that eventually ended up winning. You know, like cheeky, cheesy shit like that he didn't really know. You know, even when he scouted it, because he always scouted first with the Ansil, wasn't sure how to respond to it, right? So that's when we kind of like pushed him off his comfort zone. And then once he understood how to deal with this stuff, and then he just started winning fairly consistently. Even if the wins were really long time, it was really just like that dedicated pestering. Really not like lethal blows, but just like 6, 7, 8 Trojans worth of magicals and just shit just dropping all the time, right? Even if he loses them all, as long as he kills the worker line or whatever, right? Like, it was just constant. And you just have to deal with the constant pressure. In this game, it wasn't nearly that bad, but it was still really annoying. And I feel like Benno is not really accustomed to playing against that and doesn't really know quite how to respond to it. We would see cases where Ackmed was all caught up on his workers about to die to the Sentinels, but he ended up moving all the workers away anyways. And he could have just left some of the workers there harvesting the gas, right? There's like little tiny things all over the place. But really when he noticed with the overarching play is stuff like, okay, you've got your shit. You've got 2,000 gas. It's time to start plopping down every nanite assembly you possibly can fit into what space you have as fast as possible. Things like, you've got the end seal there, you've got the hippos coming out, you need to protect them when they come out, prioritize the targets if you're gonna fight or whatever. There was like, you know, you just got the distinct sense that he was really just like exasperated, overwhelmed, and was just being buck-broken by just the constant tickling back and forth. At all stages in this game, Popo was really on the back foot until towards the very end. It always felt like Popo had to work so hard to try to make Cyclops work, to try to make the tank push work. He finally forced down that one treasury in the front, and it took him so long to do so, and so many resources. That was the first time it felt like in the entire match he was actually starting to make progress. Whereas if Benno had been completely on the points, he could have taken over so much more of the map by then. And the same was the case for Popo. Both players, until towards the later parts of the game, effectively ignored the west half of the map. He was just basically ignored, except for that one base that Benno had forever that Popo never really did too much about. And, you know, I think like 4 or 5 Trojans worth of Ackmeds could have just like stormed those and just deleted them completely rather than dying to do Sentinels, right? So the Ackmed drops were definitely working, but, you know, every time we looked at the resources, it was Benno floating a crazy amount of resources. I mean, just look at the resource count in general. And then Popo being like low on resources, but low on pressure as well. Like, he just wasn't really being pressured that much. And Popo was in such a dangerous position when the Sundogs did come initially and start blowing up all of his bases. He was in a really, really precarious position at that point, where if Benno like pulled himself together, calmed down, took all the bases, or did some hard pressure at that point, he could have most certainly sealed that game. Or at least put Popo in such a position that sealing the game at a more comfortable time was much more realistic. But by the time Popo was starting to get to the point that he was looking at facing Hippogriffs, he had all the tools he really needed to deal with Hippogriffs. Hippogriffs have been nerfed in this version, but they're still very powerful. If Benno had ever gotten anything again, like 10 or more of them, it would have just been right in the back spot where anything that Popo has that approaches them dies instantly. But the pressure was already on, and Benno, even though it seemed like he was very needle-focused on getting those Hippogriffs at that point, didn't commit to that dream. He floated too much money and didn't build the structures on time, so on and so forth. And as a result, you know, the tools that didn't normally work against that large number of Hippogriffs worked very well against the small numbers of Hippogriffs. Using things with high armor to block their penetrating shots, using high single target damage, chasing down individual ones with faster units like the Centaur, all that was very viable when you were no longer facing overlapping rows of damage coming from, you know, multiple units at a time. Popo's macro play, he did say that this would be amusing. We did get to see Popo also really struggle a lot. And it's kind of like, these are very different players. Benno is very much like, to me, feels like the calm, collected build order player that kind of gets really flustered when things don't really go well, but still has like a core set of tenets that he follows that keep him fairly consistent. Constantly build workers, right? Like, he's very good about worker production, keeping his worker count high. Maybe not always tasking them appropriately, but at least he has them. Whereas, I know I don't do that very well. I know a lot of other people don't do that well. And then Popo has, of course, the game knowledge advantage, and then the early game would be a little bit more like flexible, I think. I think he's very flexible early on. But in Popo's case, I feel like later on, there's cases where if he gets pushed off comfort, he loses sight of what he needs to do long term, right? Like, when I think about that FFA, the Zerg FFA where I was Protoss, Popo is absolutely in a case to turn around or at least hold his ground against my attack against him, but he lost too many units in what were clearly not going to be fights he was going to be able to win. He didn't, mount enough defenses elsewhere. He was too slow to start rebuilding his tech elsewhere. If he was going to ally with Shambler, that should have been done sooner. Like, there comes times in these where you have to make a whole bunch of executive decisions all at once. And that's something generally I feel like I do fairly well in most cases. It's harder to do it in a project where you're not intimately familiar with, right? But in Popo's case, there's no one I think they would ever hope to be more familiar than him. So I would hope that, he would be the one that would always be making these executive decisions on the spot. But I feel like that if he's not in the initiative, he doesn't make those executive decisions as well. And he can still also run into multitasking issues for whatever reason. I also think Popo has a little bit of a defeatism string about him, where he can lose momentum and then it kind of compounds itself. And then he can lose games that otherwise he was in strong points to win. That's not very common, mind you. Certainly not as common as what myself would have, right? Or in Benno and both of these games, I think he's perfectly capable of pulling them out just with a few key decisions made at key points. But with Popo, it still happens in spite of the comfort zone, right?